Earlier today, Taiwan reported seeing 70 Chinese warplanes and 11 warships in its surrounding waters in the latest set of drills launched by China. Moments ago, China's military announced, though, its mission has been completed, indicating those drills may now be over. Joining us now live from Beijing, NBC News foreign correspondent Janice Mackey-Freyer, and from Taipei, Taiwan, NBC News national security and military correspondent Courtney Kuby.
So Janice, we'll begin with you. Yesterday, I had heard from a friend in the Pentagon. They were very concerned about these exercises and believed that we were moving towards a conflict. But every analysis I've read outside of that, every person that I've had contacts with in China over the past week said actually that Xi pulled back a bit in these exercises. And now the ending of these exercises would suggest that. Were you hearing conflicting signals throughout the weekend, or had you heard all along that China was going to be a bit more restrained?
Well, China had said that it was simulating sealing off Taiwan and that they had rehearsed precision strikes on key targets. This is the first time we've heard that sort of language associated with the drills, but the drills are not, were not as intense or expansive as the ones that we saw last summer after Nancy Pelosi's visit. What is curious, Joe, is that how some of this language describing the drills is being picked up and amplified to create this impression that there's this ominous drumbeat towards war, which is not the case right now. Beijing has been very deliberate in its response to that meeting between House Speaker McCarthy and Tsai Ing-wen. Xi Jinping is trying to position himself as a global statesman and China as a diplomatic power player. They're also playing the long game here. There are presidential elections in Taiwan next January. They're hoping that a more mainland-friendly candidate is going to be returned to power. So there was the sense that they weren't out to scare voters with the military drills, but certainly to be able to have this show of power, this show of confidence, and maybe have people think perhaps the U.S. isn't going to come to your rescue. What is really interesting for me in this is what has been generating attention here in state media and in social media. It's not the drills, and it's not the U.S. delegation that's been visiting Taipei. It's anything to do with France. It's anything French. It's Emmanuel Macron, who is being absolutely celebrated here after that state visit last week because of some of the comments that he was making about European strategic autonomy and not always falling into line with the U.S. position. That's after the comments he made here. Then he gave that interview to Politico and a couple of French journalists where he said, quote, "The question Europeans need to answer, is it in our interest to accelerate a crisis on Taiwan? No. The worst thing would be to think that we Europeans must become followers on this topic and take our cue from the U.S. agenda and a Chinese overreaction." He went on to say that Europeans haven't been able to solve the crisis in Ukraine, so it would not be in Europe's best interest to try to make commitments to Taiwan. So that has been music to some nationalist ears here, where the Taiwan issue actually gets very broad-based support from people who think that the island should be unified with the mainland. It also doesn't strategically help the U.S. here at a time when there is no high-level communication between the U.S. and China. There is very little trust between the two sides, and there doesn't appear to be any clear momentum to get any of it back on track.